Now that we've practiced using colored pencils, we're going to start forming a color scheme for our illustration book novel cover or illustrated short story and poem. Color schemes are a pleasing arrangement of colors. They engage the viewer and create a sense of order or balance in the visual experience, and they deliver visual interest and a sense of order. So it's really important that we choose a color scheme to kind of drive the choices of colors that we're doing in our book novel. If you have like a couple little tiny things that are needing to be colors that are outside of your color scheme, as long as they're small enough that they're not going to become a distracting element, then that's okay to do. But I'd like you guys to choose at least one of these color schemes that you see here in this PowerPoint. So the first one is you could do a warm color scheme. That's when you combine the reds, oranges, and yellows on the color wheel. You could also do a cool color scheme by combining your blues, purples, and greens. You could have your book cover be monochromatic, where you're only using one color of varying values. So here we have lots of different examples of red being used, greens, yellows, and blue. I do want to note that in any color scheme, you can add in black, gray, brown, and white, and it will not, destroy your color scheme. So black, gray, brown, and white can be added into any color scheme that you choose to do. You could do a complementary color scheme. This is when colors are opposite one another on the color wheel. When you do a complementary color scheme, your colors tend to jump off the page. You make a very bold looking artwork. So we have blue and orange. Those would be complementary colors. And then the other two, we have red and green. But yellow and purple would be another example of complementary color scheme. You could also do tertiary complementary. So like a yellow orange and a bluish purple would be considered complementary colors because they're opposite one another on the color wheel. You could do a split complementary. So for a split complementary, if you have yellow as your main color, instead of it going straight across to the purple, it would split to where it would go to the reddish purple and then bluish purple. And then that would become your split complementary. So here in the two examples that we have, we'll talk about this first one inside this lighty diner. Red is the main color that we're seeing, and then it's split to this yellowish green that we see in the letters and kind of in like this background here. And then we have a bluish green that we're seeing in the background behind those letters. So that book cover would be considered split complementary. In the other one, we have blue with like a reddish orange and then a yellowish orange added in. You can see they have a little bit of a green tree, but there's lots of blue qualities in it. So, that extra color is added in, but it's added in such a small quantity that it doesn't really quite destroy that sense of cohesion that we want to create with this color scheme in our book cover. You could also do analogous color scheme. That's when you have 2 to 3 colors that are next to one another on the color wheel. So this is great because you get to combine warm and cool colors together. So in the Amara the Brave, we're seeing red, purple, and blue being combined together. And the other one we're seeing like orange, yellow, and green. With the analogous color scheme, you really don't want to have any more than like 3, maybe 4 colors tops for this. So try to keep it within a small range. For your triadic color scheme, this is when you're combining primary colors together or secondary colors together. So I have 2 examples of the primary colors, the red, yellow, and blue being combined to create a very nice, pleasing composition. An arrangement of colors, but you could also do orange, green, and purple. The last color scheme you can choose is an earth tone color scheme. So this is a color scheme that draws from a palette of browns, tans, warm grays, greens, and whites. You can see it looks a little bit more muted. So think about, what is the title of your book, what is the context of your book, and what colors would best represent the context of the book and the feel that you want to, portray. And always think about too, who is your audience? If your audience is for little kids, doing dark, earthy tone colors like this might be a little too scary. You know, going back and doing something a little bit happier like the analogous, or you know, you can make split complementary, or any of these color schemes work for your chosen audience. So just make sure that when you choose your colors, that they follow that color scheme, so it's a pleasing arrangement. You're adding that sense of order and balance to the composition, and it's not going to look too chaotic. Okay, so for my color scheme, I'm going to be doing a split complementary of red, yellow, green, and blue, green. I am going to add little touches of yellow in for like my tortillas and stuff, but it's going to be minimal. So once again, you know, it's okay to add in a couple extra little bits of color, but just make sure it's not a predominant thing. The first thing I need to think about is I want my letters and my words to pop out. So I have to figure out a good contrast that I can do of color to really make that stand out. Tacos is going to be the one that I want to stand out the most. So I'm going to take a nice bold red, and I'm just going to just quickly mark in, okay, this is where I think I want my red to go. I am not using any colored pencil technique. I'm just marking in real fast, like almost like you were a kid. You're like doing a coloring book. And then this is where I would put some yellow in here. Now the nice thing is I'm gonna be doing a green background, so that red will pop really nicely against this like lighter green background that I'm gonna have. For Dinosaurs Love, I want that to sit further back, so I'm going to do the dinosaurs in yellow. And once again, I'm not doing like in-depth like work here. It's just something very subtle. I'm not quite sure what I want the banner color to be. I know it needs to be probably a darker value than the background, because the background's gonna be pretty light. I know what I want to do for the background is like have it fade from like a yellowish green to a bluish green. So I'm gonna have the yellow kind of concentrated near the taco and have it fade out. So this is where layering is going to come in really nicely, because those tertiary colors of yellow, green, and blue, green, you know, kind of force me to layer different colors on top of one another. And so you can start to see that by putting that lighter green next to that red, it's helping it stand out really nicely. I don't want my background to be dark though. You want your background to be a lighter value, because as things recede into the distance, they should be lighter in value, and things that are closer to you in the foreground should be darker in value. So I'm not going to go in with any dark value color in my background, because I want my background to sit back. I don't want it kind of like leaping forward. And that's another reason why I'm going to have my banner color be a darker value, so it sits in front of my lighter color background. Okay, so this is a ground plane here, so I'm going to do something different there. But just to kind of put in that bluish green that I want, I might go over top of that blue. Over top of the green with the blue. Oh my goodness. And I'm not trying to be too perfect. I'm just putting in like a rough estimation of where I want these colors to go. So whenever I do my final, I kind of can use this as my guide. Okay, so then for the Dinosaurs Love part, I think I'm gonna go in with the blue that I use in my background, but then I'm gonna go in with my darker green instead of that lighter green to really have that pop forward. And once again, this is just like a small little taste. And before I did anything, like I really sat here for maybe a good solid 5 to 10 minutes just thinking through and trying to visualize what I wanted this to look like. I didn't just jump in like what you're seeing here without fully thinking through all of my choices. Like in my head, I planned out all the bits that I wanted to add in. And then after I planned them out in my head and I kind of visualized what I wanted everything to look like, that's when I started putting colored pencil in. So, you know, take a second and really analyze your work and look at your work and think about what is going to look best for it. My background, well, first of all, actually these lines, I want to talk about these lines. These lines, I'm going to be using that scoring pattern technique. So I'm going to just make a note of that. And instead of them being white, because I don't want that white to jump forward, I'm going to shade my entire background yellow, and then I'm going to indent with the tracing paper those lines, and then shade my yellow green over top of it. So that way those things kind of, the lines sit back a little bit, but it has that little hint of yellow to there. For my background, I'm going to use the scoring pattern for these marks as well. And what I'm going to do differently for this one is I want to have a fairly, kind of a middle value background. So I would go in, I think what I'm going to do, I got to see how I like the look of this. So I might experiment with like different colors combinations to see what I like best, but I would put the green in first, then I would score the lines in, and then I would go in with my two blues, my light blue, and then my dark blue, just a little bit to get that pattern in there. Now, I don't want to do any more color because I'm starting to lose my lines, and I still have to trace this onto my final paper. But this is going to be the process that you're going to take to fill your entire composition. It's just a little rough sketch of where we're seeing your color scheme. Now, please write this color scheme that you're using on the top. So I'm doing split complementary. And then also write the colors that you're using inside there. So it's going to be red, yellow, green as my main colors, and then blue, green. Now remember, you can add in black, white, brown, and gray to any color scheme. And then, I can use a little bit of like more yellow because yellow is part of one of my colors. So using just the yellow in certain areas, like for my tacos and my letters, is okay. It's not going to derail the entire color scheme. So know that there's a little bit of creative freedom there. Once you are done with this, you have to go to your checklist and you have to go through all of these questions. Have you adhered to the brief while making it in your own style? So the briefs, I'll repost those on this assignment so you can make sure, like, okay, are you following all of the requirements? Do you have the title? Do you have the author's name in there? Do you have a composition that alludes to the context of the book? Do you have a specific audience in mind, and is that audience clear of who it is for to the viewer? Have you explored all possibilities for concept, style, and imagery? Did you take the time to look at your sketches with a fresh eye? Did you check spelling? No stone unturned. Have you challenged yourself? Do you love it? Are you so excited to start? You stopped reading at number 2. And then if you answered yes to all these questions, you are ready to move on to the final. The final we will begin next week. So, you have some time. I don't know, like this weekend that you can kind of modify anything that you feel like you need to. But get this done today. Submit a picture of it so I can give you feedback before you begin starting this final project next week.